Fluorescent light lays a chilly grid across the vinyl at gate 23, turning scuffs into pale bruises and sharpening every edge. The departures board shivers at the corners as if the screen itself is nervous. Los Angeles blinks in blue above a countdown that feels like it belongs to someone else's day. The air smells of old coffee and warm plastic, and a faint breath of metal. The scent of a place meant for moving, that is. In this moment, perfectly still. Zuri stands inside that spill of light, with her backpack snug against her spine. Her hand rests on the cool glass of her phone. She is 13 and quiet, practiced in a particular kind of stillness that her father calls the first step to order. Her eyes are on the navy rectangle in another person's hand. The passport is hers. The hand is not. The gate agent's badge throws off a hard silver glint. The small flag pin on her lapel catches the light and throws back a single star bright as a needle. Her ponytail is pulled tight and clean. She holds the passport between two immaculate nails, the way people hold flyers they did not ask for, away from the body, with a face already tilted toward refusal. The agent speaks in a voice as flat as the counter. "Oops, looks like you will not be flying today." The words hit Zuri like a pressure change. Her ears ring for a beat. A suitcase clicks twice nearby, and then glides into silence. An intercom somewhere tests a breath and cuts itself off. The room seems to draw in its own air and weight. The agent does not look at the passport when she opens her hand. The little book falls. For half a breath it floats, and then it kisses the rim of a paper cup and slides past a curl of receipt tape into the metal mouth of the bin. The sound is small and thin, paper and plastic, but the bin gives it a hollow echo that makes it feel heavier than it is, like a coin landing where a key should be. A cold chemical draft lifts from the rim. The smell of wet ink rises and folds together with the metallic edge of coffee that has been dead too long. One breath in through her nose, one measured breath out through her mouth. Zuri feels the air move in her chest the way she has practiced. A straight line in, a steady line out. Her fingers find the seam of her phone case and lay along it until they know the edge without looking. She pivots half a step, just enough for the camera to hold both faces in the same frame. Her braid and cheek and shoulder on one side of the glass, the agent's pin and mouth and desk on the other. The screen light paints a thin glaze across Zuri's knuckles. As the last sweat cools, somewhere behind her another phone chimes alive. She does not turn to see who. She already knows what it means. A second witness has decided to remember. She keeps her voice even. "Zuri Mary James. Today is this day and this time. Gate 23, Reagan National Airport, Washington, District of Columbia." The agent's mouth flirts with a smile that never quite arrives. "Turn that off." Zuri does not move the phone. The small red indicator burns steady. The air-conditioned cold skates across the bare strip of her wrist where the sleeve is pushed back. The vinyl beneath her shoes is faintly gritty with dust and road salt, and the undropped lives of travelers. "This is a public airport," she says. The syllables set square and level. "You are on duty." The pin flashes again. Zuri's reflection floats and settles in the polished counter, brown eyes steady, jaw soft but firm. At the bottom edge of her frame, the bin shows a stripe of navy between a wad of napkins and a cup with a lipstick crescent. The blue is still blue. "You just discarded my valid United States passport," she says. "I am documenting your actions." The agent leans on her palms. Her nails are the color of milk. "Watch your tone." The gate begins to breathe again around them. A strump creaks. A metal post taps once against the floor and rests. Two teenagers peel to the side and lift their phones. They wear the private, sharp look people get when they understand that a moment has chosen them and not the other way around. Zuri tightens her grip until the case prints little crescents into her skin. She keeps her voice professional, because that is what carries. She gives the sentence an extra heartbeat in her head to cool it, and then she lets it go. What you just did violates Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The words move through the space like a hush, with corners. Someone whispers Title VI with a question mark made of breath. The coffee smell shifts from sweet to metallic again. The almost smile on the agent's mouth collapses into a thin, pressed line. I do not have to explain myself to you. The paper in the bin settles with a soft shh. The red dot holds. The badge number holds. The line of the jaw holds. Zuri feels the air on her wrist grow a degree colder. The warmth of the phone has climbed into her palm. She makes a small decision with a large intention. She slides open the front pocket of her backpack with one hand, while the other keeps the frame steady. The zipper teeth whisper. She does not look down. Her fingers find a small laminated card with nicked edges and bring it up just high enough to cross the camera. Under the light, the transparent plastic flashes like a small window. The title on the card is loud even without sound. Passenger rights. She holds it a heartbeat longer than she needs to. A beat just long enough for a watching mind to recognize and retain. Then she slips it back. The corner of a folder peeks up from beneath. White paper has been worn to the softness of cloth where someone's thumb always lands. The tab on the folder is stamped in block ink. Complaint and policy notes. She leaves the folder where it is. She zips the pocket closed. Then she taps the phone and the dial pad blooms on top of the camera, which keeps the frame lifted and true. She does not look away from the agent as she presses the contact that has always lived at the top of her list. The name on the screen is what it has been since she was old enough to read it. The line beneath it in smaller letters shows another identity as clearly as any badge. Marcus. ACLU. The ringtone is crisp and alive, and it slices through the low hum of the vents like a clean line. Once, twice, her father answers with haste, hidden under control. The voice is low, clipped, and moving. Are you safe? Zuri keeps her eyes on the agent. She holds the phone nearer to her cheek than to the air, so the sound is clearly hers, but far enough that the camera can still see the essentials. I am recording, she says. Gate 23. She dropped my passport into the bin. There is a small pause on the line that feels like a held breath, filled with decisions. Her father speaks again. Do you have the card? Yes. And the folder? Here. Good. Do not raise your voice. Keep the frame steady. I am on my way. How long? 20. Maybe less. I will hold. Her voice lowers a shade. Not secret, only close, as if she is setting the words gently where they belong. Dad, the ACLU number is the same if anyone asks. The same, he says. And Zuri, Title 6 and Part 16. You know, I know. She does not end the call immediately. She lets the shape of her father's voice sit in her ear for one more beat, a structure to lean against. On the screen, the words Marcus and ACLU live for a fraction of a second longer. Bright as any pin, the agent cannot hear them. The audience can see them. Then the phone drops back to the live frame, and the red recording point, and the name disappears into the certainty of what the moment has already captured. The alliance is forged and invisible in the same breath. Zuri has it. The watchers have it. The agent does not. Zuri ends the call. She returns the camera to full. A gate chime pings at the neighboring counter, and its brief cheer snaps itself off against metal. Zuri raises the frame a fraction, so the departures board floats above the agent's shoulder. Seconds. Change in blue. That changing is a kind of drum no one asked for and everyone hears. If justice stories are your thing, hit subscribe. We dive in now. A woman with silver hair edges forward with her elbows tucked, phone lifted in a two-handed grip. A man in a navy suit straightens his tie and adjusts his stance to catch a clearer angle, the glass of his watch finding a greenish flare under the lights. A child asks something too soft to hold words, and a parent answers with a hand laid gently on a small shoulder. The agent's chair scrapes across the floor, metal feet dragging a sour note that seems to bruise the air. She stands. The pin throws another hard star. Zuri brings the badge and the pin into perfect focus without changing the steadiness of her breathing. We can do this the hard way, the agent says. Zuri feels the cold on her wrist, like a line she will not step back across. The warmth of the phone is an answer in her palm. She does not blink. Please state why you disposed of my passport. Watch your tone. The agent's jaw works. Her nails drum once, twice, 3 times in a rhythm that wants to be a threat. And then, as if embarrassed by its own music, stops. Zuri hears the vents and the electricity in the fixtures, and the soft recentering whisper of another camera behind her. She hears the faint tick of a pen somewhere to her left. She hears the old coffee refuse to be anything but metallic. She hears the part of herself that is 13 and absolutely done with the borrowed authority of people who think rules are costumes. They alone choose when to wear. Title 6, she says again, because repetition is a framework. Part 16 will follow, because processes are highways and not footpaths. She keeps that last thought to herself. She keeps almost everything to herself. What matters is that the camera sees, and the audio hears, and the truth survives the moment in a shape that can be carried. Turn it off, the agent says, each word sharpened like a thin blade that believes force is the same as weight. I will not, Zuri says. The tone is not a dare, it is a policy. The agent leans closer over the counter until the badge gleams like a mirror. What did you say your name is? You heard it, Zuri says. You are being recorded. The agent looks at the board and at the line and at the circle of small red stars that phones make when they are alive. Something passes across her face that is not thought so much as recalculation. The smile is fully gone now. There is a colder thing sitting behind her eyes. Zuri makes the smallest movement that still counts. She shifts her stance, so the laminated card flashes for a second time. Not as a new revelation, but as confirmation. She lifts the camera 1 centimeter, enough to draw the badge number and the flag pin into the sharpest plane. She lets the bin stay where it is in the lower corner. The navy pressed in among warm waste, a bruise waiting for the hand that put it there to reach in and admit it. You are on record, she says, because some sentences become truer each time they are spoken aloud. A second unfolds, and then another. People hold the space with their quiet and with the confidence of their lenses. Fine, the agent says at last, and the consonant chips a thin shard off the air. If that is how you want it. Zuri does not answer. She watches. The lens watches with her. Watching is action when it adds weight to consequences. Near the stanchions, a paper cup tumbles in the bin and bumps the passport and comes to rest. The blue shifts and settles. The coffee smell unwinds a new ribbon into the conditioned air. Zuri weighs 3 things the way she has been taught to weigh them. She feels the law pressed into the lamination under her palm, and she feels the shape of the moment caught by the red recording point, and she feels the line of her father's 20 minutes drawing a straight path through the city to this. Counter, She does not say any of that. The pictures already say more than the words would. The phone grows warmer, and the air on her wrist grows colder. She pins the truth in the place between those temperatures and keeps it still. A teenager in a denim jacket draws a quiet breath that still manages to register. The woman with silver hair shifts her stance without taking her eyes off the screen. Somewhere at the next gate, someone laughs at nothing urgent and then swallows the sound like a person remembering where they are. Zuri blinks once, slow. She keeps the badge and the pin and the shoulder line and the navy in the lower corner steady in the box. She thinks document, keep calm. Cite precisely, ask for the reason, and she hears the words like rungs on a ladder. She knows how to climb with her hands full. Please confirm that you threw my passport into the trash. She says, the room is ready to hear the answer. The recording is ready to hold it. The law is ready to meet it. Gate 23 waits, and breathes, and listens. Please confirm that you threw my passport into the trash. The sentence hangs in the air like a held breath, thin and tensile, visible only by the way people lean toward it. Zuri keeps the frame steady, shoulders square, the phone warm against the anchor of her palm. She can feel where the cool of the air meets the heat of the glass across the fine strip of skin at her wrist, a clean boundary line she refuses to cross. The agent does not answer. Her jaw shifts once, twice, as if searching for a setting between denial and authority, and finding neither. Somewhere down the concourse, an electric cart beeps and fades, a thought that never becomes a decision. The departures board sheds another soft minute in blue, indifferent and exact. Zuri lifts the lens a fraction, keeping the badge and the small flag pin tethered to the center of the shot. She hears the pen scrape in someone's pocket. She hears the lights hum. She hears, more than hears, the patience of people ready to be witnesses. State your name and position, please, Zuri says, voice even enough to stack on. Emily Thompson. The woman answers, Senior Gate Agent. Thank you, Zuri says, and she swallows once to keep the words clean. Please confirm that you disposed of my passport. I made a judgment about a suspicious document. Thompson says, shaping the line carefully, as if care could make it true. That is not a confirmation. Zuri says, did you throw it away? Thompson's eyes flicker, tied over pale sand. I placed it where it needed to go until I could decide. She says, into the trash. Zuri says, into that bin. She tips the phone a hair to bring the navy rectangle into the lower corner, between a wad of napkins and the paper rim with a crescent of lipstick. Then she brings the frame back to the face that will matter later. The one whose muscles are telling their own story, the one whose pin keeps catching cold light. Around them, a quiet soundscape grows richer. The vents exhale a steady hum. Someone whispers and is hushed. A strop creaks. A second camera makes a tiny confirmation tone, then another. Small red points of certainty, multiplying in the ring around the counter. Zuri feels her pulse not in her chest but in the thumb that braces the phone. A contained pressure, exact and useful. She thinks of rungs and the order they demand. Document, stay calm, cite precisely, ask for the reason. The words feel like steps under a foot that already knows where to land. You are being confrontational, Thompson says. If you turn off that phone, we can discuss boarding. This is not a discussion about tone, Zuri says, the syllables square and centered. This is a question about action. You have my federal travel document. You discarded it. I am documenting this for legal purposes. Thompson lifts her hand and spreads her fingers as if there is something she means to press back down into the air. Her palm lowers without finding it. Give me your phone, she says, softer, leaning across the counter. A borrowed policy trying on a borrowed voice. No, Zuri says. The syllable lands without echo and stays where it lands. The man in the navy suit clears his throat softly and lowers his phone a breath before lifting it again to a truer angle. The woman with silver hair folds her elbows tighter, bracing without quite changing her posture. The circle is not loud. It is weight. It is the clean weight of eyes that have decided not to look away. Zuri rewinds inside her own record and sets a new marker. For the video, she names herself again. She names the time, the place. She glances at the departures board and at the small digital clock on the counter and speaks both aloud, letting the numbers live in audio so no one has to guess later. Then she slides the zipper on the backpack, a thumb's width. The laminated edge flashes like a small pane of cold water under a winter sun. Passenger rights. She lets it show for a measured beat, a reminder as gentle and exact as a finger on a metronome. The corner of the folder peeks up from beneath, white softened by use. The tab stamped in simple block letters. Complaint and policy notes. She does not need to say anything. The picture leans into the line of the mind and holds. She closes the pocket again. The faint rasp of the nylon teeth is more felt than heard. "You are too young to travel alone," Thompson says, and the words sound like an old habit dressed as policy. "I am above the minimum age," Zuri says. "The ticket is paid. The document is valid. Please explain why I am receiving different treatment than the passengers you cleared before me." "Different treatment," Thompson repeats, and the echo is a step on thin ice. "Yes," Zuri says. "That is a serious accusation." Thompson says. "It is a question." Zuri answers. "What exactly about my documentation seemed suspicious? Please be specific." Thompson inhales, and the thin scrape of breath sounds like someone trying to sharpen a blade on a glass edge. "The photograph," she says, "the quality of the paper, the age of the traveler, inconsistencies." "Which security features?" Zuri asks, and the word features is very carefully shaped. "Which details failed authentication?" Thompson opens her mouth and closes it again. The fluorescent ballast sings a higher thread for a second, and then resettles. A rolling suitcase taps a chair leg, and the chair returns a hollow note, like a bell fitted with cloth. "If you continue," Thompson says, "we will have to involve security." Zuri breathes once, in and out, a drawn line and a steadier line. She thinks again of rung, and the next rung is not argument. The next rung is process. "I am requesting a supervisor," she says, "and I would like my passport returned to me immediately." "You can request what you like," Thompson says. "I am the senior agent. There is no one above me at this gate." Zuri allows that sentence to stand alone for a beat, so its thinness can be heard. "Please return my passport now," she says. Thompson's fingers tighten against the counter. She does not bend. Instead, she says again, "Give me your phone." "No," Zuri says, the word as neat as before, a tile sliding into its rightful slot. She flips to her recent call list for a brief and deliberate instant and back again, quick enough to keep the frame true. The top line is exactly what she wants it to be. "Marcus, ACLU, last call, a minute ago." She does not pronounce the letters. The camera has already stored them in a place where they will argue for her later without heat or breath. The image is the argument, the audio is its spine. Thompson sees the motion without catching its meaning, and leans farther in, as if her proximity could own the box. "You need to learn to respect adults," she says. "I respect policies." Zuri answers, "I respect equal treatment. I respect the law." The words are smooth enough to slide and lock. Systems are made of slots and tabs. Get the order right, and the lid closes clean. The stakes stand close to Zuri, not in speeches but in a pressure. She recognizes the way her hand recognizes the seam of the phone case. They are her aunt's tables set on the far coast. They are a small gift wrapped in tissue. They are also a part of air that has lived longer than she has, a pressure field that turns questions into alarms when the mouth asking them is young and brown. They are not loud. They have a palm on her shoulder the way her father rests a hand there when he wants to say, "Use what you have," in the order that keeps it strong. "Miss Thompson," Zuri says, lowering her voice one measured step into steadier range. "You do not have authority to confiscate a federal document. You do not have authority to destroy one. Please return my passport now." The agent's eyes thin. A line that was once invisible is visible to her now, and it is not where she thought it would be. Her hand lifts an inch, as if to reach over the counter, and Zuri shifts half a step back, keeping the space measured. In her pocket, the laminated card sits against fabric like a tiny book exhaling. The folder's edge nudges the heel of her hand when she adjusts her grip. Around her, the faint choir of autofocus pings multiplies, ghost music that refuses to be anything but record. Zuri speaks for the file, not just for the room. "My name is Zuri Marie James," she says, "and I am requesting my passport from Senior Gate Agent Emily Thompson. The time is now. The place is here." The passport is visible in the trash receptacle. She tilts the lens and steadies. "My father is on his way." She does not say the letters again. They live in the minds that share her secret and in the frames already taken. Thompson cannot hear them. That difference is the honest engine of suspense. It is how alliances work, when they are built out of proof instead of promise. Thompson sets both palms flat, then folds them, in through the nose and out through the mouth. The breath of someone borrowing calm. "You need to stop telling me what the law is," she says. "I am asking you to follow policy." Zuri says. "Policy," Thompson repeats, softer, as if the word is dissolving as she holds it. From the corner of her eye, Zuri sees the silver-haired witness adjust her stance. Knuckle, pale but steady. The man in the navy suit angles so he can catch both bin and badge. A denim sleeve whispers as a teenager rebraces an elbow. The ambient hum finds a slightly higher overtone, a tension line strummed by nothing you can see. Zuri lets herself feel one heartbeat whole, neither fast nor slow, precise. She remembers the kitchen table and flashcards, and the way her father's finger traced under a line of text, until her cadence matched the pace at which people hear the truth. She recalls the mornings when he smiled only with his eyes while he asked her questions, as if to say, "The answers are already in your mouth." She thinks of small questions that have tried to corner her in public rooms before, questions that pretend to be routine and are anything but. She thinks of the blue book in the bin and all the people who have been handed false stories about themselves by mouths with badges near them. "Please return my passport," she says again, the repeated words stacking into architecture, not anger. "I will call security." Thompson says, "Thank you." Zuri answers, "Please do." The answer does not fit into the script. Thompson was writing in her mind. She reaches toward the desk phone and pulls her hand back, as if it is heated. She looks over Zuri's shoulder at the ring of quiet cameras, and breath and patience. She looks down at the bin, up at the board, sideways at the clock. The calculation shows at the edges of her mouth and fails to become conclusion. Zuri keeps the frame clean. She breathes, as if laying a ruler on a page. She understands that anything said now will live later, replayed and slowed, examined against the measurement of policy rather than feelings. She understands that each second of recording is both an advance and a risk, not for her alone. She feels a tremor of what her father carries into rooms like this when people call his number and say, "Please." She knows that line too well to name it. She chooses not to name it now. She lets it be the quiet gravity on which her steadiness rests. The laminated card presses again, soft and real. The folders tab, complaint and policy notes, is a small white tooth, ready to bite paper and ink and timestamps. Zuri slides the bag a little, letting the edge of the card flash again, a reminder for anyone who missed it. A thin, bright chime inside the mine. She does not add commentary. She does not need to. The camera is already speaking in a language that obeys rules better than voice does. The bin whispers as a paper cup shifts and touches the navy. The sound is small and mean, a dry rub. The lipstick crescent on the cup faces the lens like a smirk. Zuri tightens the shot by a breath, so the badge returns to the center. She hears the man in the suit breathe out once through his nose. She hears the silver-haired woman whisper, "I saw her do it." And the whisper is not for the room. It is for the record she is building on her own device. Parallel and strong. "Please confirm," Zuri says, "that you threw my passport in the trash." Thompson's lips part and close. "Security," she says again. And this time the word is less a threat than a step she has finally decided to take. Zuri nods once, a motion measured to be visible without adding commentary. "Thank you. I will speak with them." She tilts the lens so the live frame can see down the aisle where uniforms become clearer with each footstep. The rhythm of shoes on tile walks toward them, regular and dry. People in the ring do not scatter. They shift gently to allow approach without losing the geometry of witnessing. Before that line meets this counter, Zuri places one more sentence exactly where it belongs. "My name is Zuri Marie James," she says. "I am 13 years old. My ticket is valid. My passport is valid. Please return it to me now." The agent's mouth tightens. Her hand hovers above the edge of the counter and does not cross it. The passport remains a navy bruise in a nest of white. The phones breathe. The air waits. The footsteps come on. Zuri keeps focus locked. Frame true. Record alive. The alliance at her back is warm and cool at once, steady as a hand on her shoulder, and as impartial as the little red light that does not blink. She does not let the truth move. She does not need to raise her voice to make it heavier. She lets the sound of the approaching steps take that weight and carry it toward impact. The room listens as if listening itself were a promise. The fluorescent hum sits like a thin wire stretched tight. The departure board glows its indifferent blue. The world of the airport goes on, but the corner of it, named Gate 23, has stepped into a different kind of time, the kind that takes a moment and begins to turn it into proof. And then the uniforms arrive at the edge of the circle, and the chapter breathes once more before the next begins. Footsteps arrive before faces, dry and measured. They come from the far end of the concourse, a steady metronome that cuts through the tightened quiet at Gate 23. Not the hurried beat of an emergency, not the careless scuff of a rush, but the rhythm of authority taking its time because it does not need to borrow urgency to carry weight. People step back without being told. Phones rise a little higher. The air itself seems to thicken and hold. Two uniforms clear the last line of stanchions. One officer is taller, his gaze level and unhurried, a silence he carries like a tool. The other moves his eyes over faces and angles, not hunting, counting. Zuri keeps the frame steady. Her wrist holds the familiar line where cool air meets warm glass, and that line steadies her grip more than any strap could. She breathes once, and her voice is ready even before she hears it. For the record, she names the arrival, spare and precise. 2 officers approaching the counter at gate 23. She does not guess ranks. She does not decorate titles. The camera needs what is true, and only that. The taller officer nods once to Zuri, once to the senior agent, once to the ring of phone. His voice arrives, smoothed by use, sanded down by repetition, until it can hold facts without bruising them. Tell us what happened. Zuri does not lower the phone. The bin is in the lower corner of the shot, the badge and the flag pin centered. She lays down the narrative the way her father taught her to build it. Subject and verb. 1 stone at a time. The gate agent took my passport. The gate agent dropped it in the trash. I asked for the reason. I asked for a supervisor. I asked for my document to be returned. I am recording because this is a public space, and I am documenting a denial of boarding in spite of valid identification. The ring holds its breath like a shoreline holding a wave. The woman with silver hair raises her phone until her elbows lock, and then relax by a fraction. A small adjustment that reads as commitment rather than strain. The man in the navy suit steadies his stance, angling his lens to include both the bin and the badge. 2 teenagers edge half a shoe closer, not crowding, simply choosing to be where seeing becomes certainty. The taller officer turns to the agent, keeps his tone plain. Did you place her passport in the trash? The agent's mouth tries a shape and abandons it. I made a judgment about a suspicious document, she says, picking each word as if a different word might change the shape of the thing that already happened. That is not what I asked. The officer replies, did you discard the passport? I placed it temporarily, she says. I was still deciding. Silence accepts the sentence and returns it unchanged. The taller officer looks at the bin, then at the young gate employee hovering near the end of the counter, like a question without a home. We are going to retrieve it, he says, and the line lands with the clean stamp of a decision that does not require consent. The senior agent moves an inch, as if to shield the bin, and then stops mid-gesture. The ring of phones is a quiet wall. She cannot push through without leaving a mark she does not want recorded. She steps aside by another inch. Not welcome, not refusal, only admission that she is not alone. The young employee steps forward when the officer nods to him. His name tag catches the light like a small, polished coin. He is not much older than the teenagers. His concern has nowhere to settle safely, and so it lives in the set of his shoulders until a request gives it work to do. Would you retrieve the document? The taller officer asks. We will do this in view of the cameras. He includes Zuri and the nearest witnesses, with a glance and the smallest tilt of his hand. Please keep recording. The young employee nods. A glance seeks permission from the senior agent and finds only a painted wall. He centers himself with a breath and lifts the bin lid between 2 fingers. The plastic lip gives a dry squeak. The smell of old coffee and damp paper breathes up, sharper now that the mouth is open. He crouches. Paper rustles and hushes. Plastic taps plastic. A stir stick clicks and rolls back. He parts a nest of napkins, and there it is. A navy edge, kissed by a brown stain like a shadow. His hand pinches the corner lightly. The room pulls sound inward. He lifts. A drop of coffee lets go of a soggy rim and ticks to the bottom like a small clock agreeing with itself. He sets the passport on the counter, on a dry patch just beyond the keyboard. The sound it makes is small as a page turning. The sight of it is larger than any voice could make it. Zuri keeps the frame steady and lets her breath out through her nose in a line she has practiced until it leaves no fog on the glass. The document sits whole in the lens, its navy clean even under a wet border of brown. The taller officer does not touch it yet. He looks to Zuri, Do I have your permission to open it to verify name and photo? Yes, Zuri says. Please verify on camera. He nods. Two fingers at the top edge flip the cover, careful to keep the seal clear and the movement in view. The inner page opens under fluorescent light. The photograph looks up. The name is there. The place of birth sits where it should. Dates line up with the dry exactness of dates. He tips the page until the hologram shifts and settles. A rainbow that does not perform so much as fulfill a design promise. He reads the name aloud for the audio. He spells the last name so a later listener will not guess. He looks from page to face and back, with the practical focus of someone learning the difference between discretion and evidence. This appears valid, he says. The photograph matches. The document number is consistent with current issue. The seal reacts to light as designed. Zuri does not smile. She does not feed a future edit with anything that could be painted as triumph. Thank you, she says, measured. The lens returns to the badge, and the bin remains in the corner, a bruise of navy turned into proof. The shorter officer addresses the senior agent in the same unchanging tone. On what basis did you decide the document was suspicious? The agent's jaw hardens until it shows white. The paper felt thin. She says, the age of the traveler required extra scrutiny. There were inconsistencies. Which inconsistencies? The officer asks. Her hands open and show their emptiness. The photograph, she says. The maturity of the individual. The young employee glances between faces, then points at the page with a caution that still manages to be clear. The photograph matches, he says, voice small but clean enough for microphones. The laminate has the correct feel. The fonts and perforations appear standard. He hesitates, then lets the sentence he has been carrying find air. I have watched this desk most of the morning. She is not the first traveler of color to be asked for more than others. The line does not ring, it drops like a key on a table. At the precise moment the lock stops, pretending to be a puzzle. The woman with silver hair tilts her phone so the officers can see her screen. A frame is frozen there. The senior agent's hand over the bin. The passport on its way down. In the corner of the frame, a time mark shines, as if the screen had polished it. The woman clears her throat gently and speaks so her own audio will have the words captured at 14:07. She says, I filmed the entire interaction. A soft chime seems to live inside the number when she says it, 14:07. An echo of the earlier reveal, not loud, only precise. The kind of detail that ties a knot between moments. The man in the navy suit, steady as a level, repeats the time into his own phone for his file, 14:07. The teenagers look between the screens and Zuri and the passport and then back again, learning without being taught how facts braid themselves into rope. Zuri does not name the echo out loud. The frame holds it. The microphones catch it. The audience hears the knot tie and feels it pull tight. The taller officer nods to the woman, thanks her, and then to the young employee. What is your name? James Park, he says. Thank you. Mr. Park, please remain close. We may need your statement, the officer says, and the line gives James something to stand behind. That is not a person and not a fear. He breathes more evenly. His shoulders find a level. The taller officer turns back to Zuri. Would you like the passport returned to your hand now? Or shall we keep it on the counter in the camera's view until a supervisor arrives? So there is no question about chain of custody. Chain of custody arrives in Zuri's ear, like a word she knows in two languages at once. Law and fairness. She thinks one beat and chooses the picture that stays strongest. Please keep it in view on the counter, she says. Thank you. James slides a clean paper towel under the document so moisture from the stain will not travel into the desk. He does it with the quiet care of someone moving a small living thing from a dangerous place to a safe one. Navy settles on white. Light skims across the page like a thin lake. The shorter officer speaks to the ring, to the room, to the record. Keep recording from where you are. You are within your rights. Do not block aisles. Do not interfere. The room exhales together. The instruction is not news, and still it matters to hear it said. The alliance tightens and becomes quieter in the tightening. A scatter of focus tones spark and then go still as lenses confirm and rest. The fluorescent hum steadies into a thin note that could be mistaken for silence, if not for the small sounds braided through it. The breath of someone between sentences, the tick of a watch, the almost inaudible rasp of a plastic badge against fabric when someone shifts weight. The senior agent places her palms on the counter as if touch alone could turn ground into certainty. Her voice climbs onto a rung that is too thin to hold it. She was being difficult, she says. Asking why you are being denied service is not difficulty, Zuri says. It is a request for clarity. Her voice is level to the line on a ruler. It does not move up or down. It refuses to add sugar or salt. The taller officer raises his radio to his shoulder. A breath of static grazes the edges of the room. Supervisor to gate 23. He says the words civil rights and witness videos and maintain scene sitting inside the message like braces. He does not rush the line. He does not slow it for drama. The radio answers with a brief confirmation that sounds like a nod. Zuri keeps filming. She trims the frame by a breath to include both the navy on white and the senior agent's badge and the calm hands of James Park. She names what the camera sees for the record. The passport is on the counter in view. The cover shows a coffee stain, but the document is intact. The name matches the boarding pass. Officers are present. Witnesses are recording. The senior agent has not returned the passport. The man in the navy suit speaks for the circle rather than into it. I watched her drop it, he says. Deliberate. He does not perform emphasis. He offers it the way a person sets down a heavy object, so it does not roll. The silver-haired woman scrolls back to an earlier clip on her phone and pauses on the image of a mother with 3 children being questioned in a way that stripped dignity from routine. Her voice is quiet and sure. This is from earlier today. She says, same desk, same agent, different family. You can hear the question about whether the children were hers. She does not imitate the tone. She does not need to. The picture will carry it forward, and the audio will keep the shape of the harm. The teenagers do not add narration. One lowers her phone to type a single line note on the clip she is saving and lifts it again. Zuri sees the motion mirrored in the polished metal rim of the counter and does not turn. She lets the reflection be enough. The lens returns to the badge, the pin, the navy on white. The taller officer addresses Zuri again. Would you like to add anything before the supervisor arrives? Yes, Zuri says. Her words are spare so they will travel farther. I request a formal complaint form. I request that this interaction be preserved by airport cameras. I request that any decision regarding boarding be based on valid documentation, not on my age or my race. Those are appropriate requests. The officer says he does not praise. He does not soften. He lets the appropriateness be a rail. The next train of actions can run on without derailing. The senior agent stares at the Navy book, as if an object has betrayed her. Her throat moves once. She says nothing. Silence has changed sides. James Park stands a half step back from the paper towel, aligned with the document, rather than the person whose title used to define his safest direction. He glances at Zuri, and offers the smallest signal, not apology, not gratitude, a simple present acknowledgement. It lands in Zuri like a hand on a shoulder that asks nothing but gives balance. From down the concourse, a new sound grows under the fluorescent note. Footsteps again. Not the dry, steady rhythm of first arrival, but something with intention layered into it. Longer stride, heavier heel. People in the circle shift, as if the air has tilted. A lane opens of its own accord. The air grows cooler by a breath, as if a door has opened somewhere and told the vents to try harder. Zuri does not change the frame. The camera holds the blue rectangle, the badge, the pin, the folded hands, the officers, the ring of phones, the bin, the navy on white. She lets the incoming sound sit in the audio as carefully as she has let whispers and pings and ticks sit there. Evidence does not choose pretty or ugly. It chooses true. She breathes once, slow, inside the pace. Her father taught her to keep when the room wants her to hurry and make mistakes. She does not look for the clock. Time is now kept by the camera and by the alliance behind her that beats in the steadiness of breath and the small, stubborn red lights that do not blink. The taller officer lifts his radio again. The static is softer this time. A thread. Supervisor now approaching gate 23. He says, "Maintain positions. Maintain recording. Thank you." Zuri says to the audio more than to the people, and in that thank you sits the posture of a person who knows one more rung has just been added to the ladder. She is climbing with both hands full. The footsteps stop at the circle's edge. The ring of phones holds and then bends open like a hinge. Before faces resolve, the radio on the taller officer's shoulder gives one more short reply, a clipped confirmation that carries more weight than volume ever could. The room becomes itself again, and also something more. The fluorescent hum seems lower by a fraction. The departures board glows in its indifferent blue, a clock that does not care. While everything at gate 23 cares very much, the passport rests on white, under light. The senior agent does not reach for it. The witnesses do not speak. The air waits and listens the way a witness listens. Because listening can be a promise, Zuri steadies the lens. The truth is a living thing in the box now, and it has grown roots across the counter and along the tile. And through the tight breaths, people keep, so they do not shake their cameras. She keeps her voice ready without needing to use it. She feels the cold at her wrist, the warmth in her palm, the line that holds them apart, and she lets that line hold her too. The taller officer raises the radio one last time, and the static kisses the air. Supervisor to gate 23. Status active, he says. Then he lowers it. The only sounds left are the thin, electric breath of the lights, the quiet beating of feet that have just stopped, and the steady, soft weight of people who know the next thing will matter more than anything that has happened so far. The crowd falls silent before anyone speaks. Footsteps approach from the concourse, firm, and even the sound of heels meeting tile in a measured pattern that carries its own authority. The ring of witnesses loosens just enough to make a clean lane. Air seems to compress and then hold as a woman in a fitted blazer steps into the space. The silence has already cleared for her. Silver threads at her temples return the cold light without glare. She carries a small leather folio close to her ribs, a radio at her hip, and a voice that does not need to be loud to reach every edge of the gate. "Good afternoon," she says. "Keep recording. No one will interfere with the right to document." Zuri's phone does not waver. "For the record," she says, her tone even and clear. "A supervisor has arrived at this gate. The passport remains visible on the counter. Witnesses are recording. Officers are present." The supervisor sets the folio down. The leather makes a faint, resolved sound against the laminate. She opens the cover and removes a clear evidence sleeve, the kind with a white band for time and name. Her movements are precise without being fussy. The choreography of someone who knows each step matters, because each step will be seen again. She looks to the taller officer, then to Zuri. One person at a time, she says. Short, exact. Tell me the sequence. Zuri keeps the bin in the lower corner of her frame, and the badge and flag pin centered. The agent took my passport, she says. The agent dropped it in the trash. I asked for the reason. I requested a supervisor. I requested the document be returned. Officers retrieved it on camera. The document appears valid. I asked for preservation of footage and a formal complaint form. Thank you. The supervisor says. She nods once, like a metronome striking the line. Officer, your observations. We verified the document appears valid on camera. The taller officer answers. There are independent witness videos of the disposal. A staff witness states that similar scrutiny has been applied to multiple passengers of color at this desk today. We have not returned the passport in order to preserve chain of custody until your arrival. The supervisor turns to the senior agent. Her gaze is steady and without temperature. Did you place the passport in the trash? A pause opens and closes. The senior agent chooses her words, the way a person chooses stones across a creek that is already running too fast. I made a judgment about a suspicious document, she says. I placed it temporarily while I decided. The supervisor does not repeat her question. She angles her body so that the sealed sleeve she is about to use, the Navy book on the towel, the senior agent's badge, and the ring of cameras all occupy the same slice of air. Mr. Park, she says, glancing to the name tag at the edge of the counter. Please assist. Handle the sleeve. Keep your hands in view, Miss James. Continue recording. James Park steps forward. His breath lifts once and steadies. He opens the clear sleeve. The plastic whispers. He slides the Navy book inside. Careful to keep the damp coffee shadow from folding against the seam, he smooths the sleeve on the towel with a gentle palm and steps back. The supervisor uncaps a permanent marker. The cap makes a crisp click that lands like a small gavel. She writes the date in full words, and the time in words as well. Each stroke a dark, deliberate line. She prints her name, signs, and lifts the adhesive strip. The seal rips softly as it leaves its paper, and then whispers as she presses it down. She turns the sleeve and holds it for 1 beat longer than necessary, so that every lens can register the text and the signature. Chain of custody begins here, she says. The phrase has the weight of a steel rail laid true. She replaces the sealed sleeve on the towel, so it remains inside Zuri's frame. Miss James, she says, do you prefer that I hand this to you now or keep it in view while we speak? I will follow your preference. Keep it in view, Zuri says. Thank you. The supervisor inclines her head. She turns to the woman with the silver hair. May I see your recording? Only the frame that shows the disposal and the visible time. Hold the phone yourself. I will not touch it. The woman raises her phone. On the screen, the senior agent's hand hovers above the open bin, with the passport between intention and gravity. In the corner, the time stands clean. The supervisor notes it aloud, so the room will own it as a single fact. 14 minutes past the hour and 7 minutes. She says, thank you. She turns to the man in the Navy suit. Yours. He scrolls, stops the clip where the Navy falls, and the soft, harsh music of paper on plastic marks the moment. He repeats the time in a voice that holds like a level. The teenagers edge closer, and then remember not to crowd. Their cameras drink the angle and the timestamp without commentary. The supervisor faces the senior agent again. Her tone does not sharpen, it flattens to the truth. "You are relieved of duty at this desk effective immediately," she says. "Step back. Remove your badge and access card. Place them beside the sealed passport so they are in view of the cameras." A brief stillness opens like a small door. Air moves through it. The senior agent's hand tightens on the counter and then releases. She unpins the badge. Metal clicks on laminate with a dry, plain sound. The access card follows. A softer tap. The supervisor does not look away from the towel while either sound is born. "You will wait to one side until operations escorts you." The supervisor says, "Do not speak to witnesses. Do not approach the counter." The senior agent's mouth opens and closes. She steps back, hands at her sides. The ring does not murmur or applaud. The ring breathes out together like a room that has put down something heavy. Zuri keeps the frame clean. She moves nothing but her breath. The towel holds 3 proofs under light now: the sealed passport, the badge, the card. Their shapes are unremarkable, and that is their strength. The supervisor lifts her radio. Static brushes the air like a fingertip across paper. "Preserve camera feeds for this gate and the adjacent corridor for the last 4 hours, she says. "Mark the segment at 14 minutes past the hour and 7 minutes for immediate hold. Dispatch operations to escort 1 employee from this counter. Bring consumer relations materials to this gate. Notify legal. Complaint intake is requested." Replies. Return as crisp little stones dropped into a still pool. Each one sinks to its task and vanishes into motion. The supervisor looks to Zuri. "Miss James," she says, speaking to a teenager without shrinking the respect due to a witness. "You requested a complaint form. I will provide it. You requested written acknowledgement that footage preservation has been initiated with time markers. You will have it. Boarding decisions will be based on valid documentation. That is the standard. Today, it will be enforced. Are you injured? Do you need water? Do you wish to call a guardian on speaker? My father is on his way." Zuri says, "I would like the complaint form and a signed acknowledgement of preservation with the time noted. I would also like the name and direct number of the person who will be my point of contact." "You are speaking to her," the supervisor answers. She writes her name and title across the top line of a printed form. She adds a direct number beneath it, and the time in words, and the note that preservation has been ordered. She signs, dates, and slides the form into a clear sleeve of its own. She places it on the towel in the same frame as the sealed passport and the badge and the card. "Please state for the record," she says, "that you have received these documents and that your passport remains sealed and in view. I have received a formal complaint form and a written acknowledgement that camera preservation has been initiated with the time noted." Zuri says, "My passport is sealed and remains visible." "Thank you," the supervisor says. She glances to the taller officer. "Names, please." She gathers witness names, not to trap, but to honor the work of memory. She asks James Park to remain close for a written statement. She nods to the woman with silver hair and the man in the navy suit. Recognition without ceremony. The soundscape sharpens and softens around the process. The quiet scrape of paper moving, the brush of marker against plastic, the small seal whispering shut, the pen scratch as Zuri prints her name. The hum of the lights flattens into a thin thread beneath everything, like a string section playing one held note while the soloists work. The supervisor addresses the ring. "If you are willing, provide statements," she says. "If not, keep your recordings. Do not delete anything. Send copies to the traveler upon request." The address on her form is live. She returns to Zuri. You are not required to continue at this counter. She says, we can move to a private seating area for completion of the form with an officer present while your camera runs. Or, we may remain here. Here is fine. Zuri answers. She adjusts the phone by a breath, so the cut edge of the counter sits at the lower third, while the towel remains centered. She begins to write. Her block letters are firm, each sentence short enough to stand by itself, if it had to. The agent took my passport and dropped it in the trash at this gate. I requested the reason, and a supervisor. Officers retrieved the passport on camera. The document appears valid. Witnesses recorded the disposal at 14 minutes past the hour and 7 minutes. Preservation has been acknowledged in writing. The pen makes a distinct, small rasp that microphones love. It becomes a spine under the supervisor's next calls. A pair of operations officers appear beside the ring, one woman and one man. The supervisor gestures without looking away from the towel. Escort the employee from this counter, she says. The senior agent places her radio down with a careful, quiet click, then walks out along the lane. The crowd provides without meeting any eyes. No one speaks. Silence carries her to the bend in the concourse, and around it, the supervisor breathes a hair deeper. It does not show in her shoulders. It reveals itself only in the clean space she leaves after her next sentence. James, she says, you will receive custody of the sealed sleeve. We can transfer that now and note it. Or we can carry the sleeve to a service desk and return it to you after a copy of the cover is made for our file. You will witness any copy. The sleeve will not be opened again without you or your guardian present. Here is fine, Zuri says. My father will want to witness any copy. That is appropriate. The supervisor says. She writes the word appropriate on the form, the ink drying into a promise. She turns to the taller officer. Notify legal that counsel is expected on site. She turns back to Zuri. Would you like to place a call on speaker to update your father on the status of the passport and the chain? Zuri taps her screen, and the last call floats up, visible for a breath to every lens that needs to see. That a call is not an invention. She connects. The ring quiets further, as if quiet could have degrees. I am safe, she says. When the line opens, the supervisor is here. The passport is sealed and time-stamped on camera. Complaint form in Hunt. Preservation acknowledged in writing. We are keeping the sleeve in view until you arrive. Good. Her father says, his voice low and even, keep your voice steady. Do not allow anyone to separate you from the document or the camera. I am close. We will be here. Zuri says. She ends the call and settles the frame back into the exact position it held, like a dancer returning to first position. After a single measured turn, the supervisor speaks into her radio again. Preserve all relevant gate camera feeds and adjacent corridor for the stated window, she says. Flag the segment, identified by witnesses. Confirm when copies have been written to secure storage. Bring complaint intake envelopes to this counter. The replies come as a series of short acknowledgments that sound like a rail bed, accepting new ties. She turns slightly to the ring. Thank you for your patience. She says, your recordings are important. Please keep them secure. The woman with silver hair nods. Do you need anything, dear? She asks, her voice soft but clear enough for the microphones to claim it. Thank you, Zuri says. I am good. The man in the navy suit clears his throat and steadies it. I will email my video to the address on the form, he says. I will keep the original. Thank you, the supervisor answers. The gratitude wears authority like a uniform. James Park folds his hands and unfolds them. His mouth gathers one sentence and releases it with care. "I am sorry," he says. The words are not an excuse and not a plea. They are an acknowledgement, and they find the place in the air that belongs to them. "Thank you for speaking," Zuri says. It is the only answer that does not weaken the moment. The radio at the supervisor's hip murmurs a confirmation that preservation has begun. She writes the note on the form in the same clean hand. She does not look at a clock. Time now is made of steps taken correctly, and marked in ink and held in audio. Around the ring, sounds settle into order. Paper turns. A pen resumes its small rasp as Zuri fills the narrative field with the exact number of words it needs, and no more. The sealed sleeve gleams on the towel. The badge beside it, a small, square confession of metal. The card, a plain punctuation mark. The fluorescent hum stays thin and steady. The ever-present breath of the building. A child in the distant seating area asks a question, and a parent answers with a hand, not a word. The supervisor keeps standing at the counter with Zuri. She does not hover, she does not lean. She matches posture as a kind of vow. "If you prefer to stand, I will stand with you," she had said, and now she does. The concourse sends forward a new rhythm of footsteps, heavier heel, longer stride, the sound of intention that belongs to someone who is coming toward a problem he already knows how to meet. The ring breathes in as one, and leaves a clean path without being told. The supervisor lifts her radio again, and a thin stripe of static brushes the air before her words arrive. "Counsel expected at this gate," she says. "Maintain scene. Maintain recording. Confirm complaint intake receipt at counter." Each order lands like a track segment set, a line of steel placed true for a train that is not here yet but will be soon. Zuri signs the final line on the form. Her name writes its clean shape, with a firmness that does not need flourish. The pen stops. The air does not. They wait, but not passively. They hold, they stand, they keep. The room is not empty. It is exact, and in that exactness a kind of quiet power gathers, ready for the next necessary sound. The new footsteps carry purpose more than speed, a longer stride that knows exactly where it is going. The ring of witnesses opens as if remembering a drill practiced in silence. He enters the lane with shoulders set by habit rather than display, tie slightly off from the drive that brought him here, eyes moving in 3 quick stations. His daughter, the sealed sleeve, the woman at the counter who holds the room without raising her voice. "For the record," Zuri says, "counsel has arrived. The passport remains sealed and visible. Complaint acknowledgement is on the counter." Has stops beside her, not between her and the lens, never between her and the truth. "You good?" he asks, low and private inside the public air. "Safe," she answers, "seal intact, time marked, preservation in writing." A crease at his brow eases by the smallest measure. He nods to the supervisor. "Thank you for holding the scene." "You are welcome." The supervisor says, "Preservation is initiated. Complaint acknowledged. Badge and access card secured before escort. We will transfer custody at your direction." He sets his brief palm on the counter, not touching any evidence, only anchoring himself to the surface where facts have been set. "Thank you," he repeats, the words precise and spare. Then to Zuri, softer, "You lead the record." "I will," she says. The supervisor draws a transfer log from her folio, a thin sheet with boxes that turn actions into a clean chain. She reads the seal out loud. Date in words. Time in words. Her name, her initials. She lays the log on the towel, so it lives in the same frame as the sleeved passport and the surrendered badge and the access card. Names and signatures in order, she says. He does not take the pen first. He looks to Zuri. Your line. Zuri prints her name in steady block letters they have practiced at the kitchen table, then signs with the careful hand that knows signatures are not decoration. They are doors that swing and stay swung. He signs beneath her, then prints his roll. The supervisor countersigns. The taller officer adds initials and badge number. The pen sounds like a fine rasp on paper. A small spine under the room. Custody transfer. The supervisor says. She lifts the sealed sleeve with the gentleness reserved for small living things and places it into Zuri's hand. The plastic is cool and certain. The weight is not heavy, but it makes its own gravity. Zuri's fingers firm on the edges. Her wrist finds that familiar boundary where cold meets warm and holds it like an anchor. Would you like a copy of the cover for the record? The supervisor asks. We can do it here. The seal stays closed. You will witness. Yes. Counsel says. Copy here. Keep everything visible. The supervisor produces a compact scanner from the folio, a tool that belongs at counters like this because back rooms make stories. She plugs it into the power strip, wipes the glass, and looks to Zuri. May I place the sleeve face down? Place it, Zuri says. The scanner wakes with a quiet hum. Light passes beneath the plastic, gliding under crest and signature and timestamp. A thin bar that renders the moment into lines. A machine can hold. The paper slides from the printer with a soft breath. The supervisor staples the copy to the complaint form. Writes, witnessed by traveler in the margin, initials and time. Then returns the sealed sleeve to Zuri's hand. Copy complete with seal intact. She says, attached to the file. Traveler retains custody. Thank you, counsel says. He angles his body so that Zuri and the supervisor and the towel live in one alignment. A clean spine inside the lens. He turns to his daughter again, voice low. Do you want to board today or rebook? Your choice. Rebook, she says after one measured beat. Same day if possible. After we finish, we will finish, he says. Then to the supervisor. Rebook on the 1st. Available at no cost to the traveler. With written notation that the delay resulted from the airline's actions at the gate. Agreed. The supervisor says she writes the line before she enters it, as if ink is the first law, and screens are memory aids. The taller officer clears his throat lightly. We will also preserve audio where corridor mics exist, he says to counsel. It may support statements about tone and volume. Appreciated, counsel says. He meets the officer's eyes long enough to turn politeness into commitment. Then, to the supervisor, we will need complaint history at this desk, redacted as required, but with patterns intact, training records for gate staff, and explicit policy regarding confiscation authority over federal documents. Noted, she says. Policy will come from operations. Legal will guide on protocol. I will carry the requests forward. We will also need a commitment on non-retaliation for staff who speak, including Mr. Park. Counsel adds, the supervisor writes non-retaliation in the margin and boxes it with a crisp square, a visible promise that will later require muscle. Counsel faces the ring without moving away from the towel. Thank you for recording, he says. Keep your originals. Share copies at your discretion. If anyone pressures you, write names, dates, and exact words. Your presence already matters. The woman with silver hair raises her chin. I sent the first clip, she says. I will keep the master on my phone and at home. The man in the navy suit taps his screen. I will send a compressed copy and keep the raw file, he says. James Park steps near the counter's edge. Careful but sure. I have notes. He says, dates and times when extra questions went to passengers of color. I did not know who to tell. I will put them in writing. Thank you. The supervisor says, "Thank you." Counsel echoes. The room does not swell. It deepens. Zuri shifts her grip to hold the sleeve against her chest with her non-dominant hand, the lens steady in the other. She breathes in through her nose, out through her mouth. The way she learned for debates and quiet bravery, the world narrows to frame, sound, and weight. The rest of the terminal becomes a shore beyond a calm cove. Counsel's attention returns to the absence that still shapes the air. He does not seek the senior agent with his eyes. He states the harm like a stone that will not dissolve. A traveler of color was denied boarding without cause, and her federal document was discarded. He says, for the record, witnesses ensured the truth did not vanish. We will require policy change and a public apology protocol, not a private line in an inbox. The question is not whether, the question is when and how it is documented. The supervisor nods once. It will be addressed at the director level, she says. She does not defend. She does not dampen. She writes apology protocol on her pad and keeps her hand there. He looks to Zuri and lets the room hear what he needs her to know. You did everything right, he says. We are not just asking for accountability, we are asking for change. Zuri's mouth almost curves, and then returns to neutral. I have the folder, she says. The proposals, passenger bill of rights, oversight, audits. Of course you do, he says, not surprised. Later chapter, not this minute. We keep suspensey, not mystery. She nods. The difference has become the difference between a wave and a rip current. She guards the frame and waits. Footsteps again. A heavier heel. A longer stride. The supervisor lifts her radio before the figure appears. Operations director approaching, she says. Maintain recording. The lane opens without asking. Counsel does not move forward to claim space. He keeps Zuri as the center of the picture and aligns himself to her line. The director comes into view with a notebook instead of a prop. Authority carried like a tool, not a costume. Her eyes take in the towel, the sleeve, the badge, the access card, the signed forms, and finally the young face behind the phone. Are you safe? She asks. Not small talk, not pity, but the ground question. I am safe, Zuri says. The director nods once, then acknowledges counsel by name, a courtesy that also signals history. She sets the notebook parallel to the towel, alignment without show. Her voice holds the room, the way a level line holds a picture on a wall. Before policy, she says, we will state what happened and what will not happen again. Her gaze sweeps to include the ring. Keep recording. No one is to interfere. Counsel uses the brief space before the statement to lay rails. On record, he says, this gate denied a traveler of color without cause, and an employee discarded a federal document. Witnesses preserved the truth, with video from multiple angles. Policy will change because a teenager kept a lens steady, and because strangers chose not to look away. We are prepared to work with you if you move decisively. If not, we are prepared to move you. Understood, the director says. She opens the notebook and uncaps a pen. The sound is a small, certain click that lands like a marker on a line that will not be erased. Zuri steadies the frame so the towel, the sleeve in her hands, the notebook, and the faces that matter all live inside it together. The sealed plastic is light but not nothing. Both hands hold it now, not clutching, simply certain. Her breath stays even. The hum of the lights becomes the thin note under the room again. She waits for the words that will place the next stone where all the other stones have prepared a path. The director speaks with the pace of a person who understands that speed and urgency are different. At this gate today, she says, an employee threw a traveler's passport into a trash bin. That will never happen again in this airport. The traveler's document is intact, and in the custody of the traveler, witness videos confirm the event and have been requested for the complaint file at the traveler's discretion. Camera feeds are preserved. The employee involved has been removed from duty and escorted from the area pending investigation. Non-retaliation is in effect for any staff who provide statements. She looks to James Park. That includes you. Yes, Mom, James says, the words landing like a small anchor for his spine. The director continues, "We will conduct a review of complaint history at this desk and adjacent desks. We will audit training on bias and identification procedures, and will consult with consumer protection to refine gate protocols, including public apology procedures when harm occurs. We will issue an apology today at this gate and a formal written apology to the traveler and her family." Counsel nods. Once for each rail, on record, he says, "Public here, written follow-up, preservation confirmed, non-retaliation in effect, complaint history and training records under review, policy language on confiscation authority to be clarified and published." The supervisor writes as the words are spoken, not after, a habit that makes paper into witness rather than archive. The taller officer keeps his place, a quiet pillar on the far side of the towel. The ring holds the phone steady without swaying. Not cheer, no hiss, only a held breath that signals respect rather than fear. Zuri speaks for the record, as she has done since the moment the document fell. The director has acknowledged the event and stated corrective steps. The passport is sealed and remains in my custody. Non-retaliation has been stated. Complaint history and training will be reviewed. An apology will be issued here and in writing. The director meets Zuri's eyes without looking past her age or over it. "I am sorry for what happened to you at this gate," she says, each word clear enough to be cut from audio and still stand honest. "The apology will be repeated for your camera in a moment. The employee's conduct was discriminatory and unacceptable. We failed you today. We will not fail the next traveler." Zuri gives a small nod, not to forgive the building, not to comfort the room, but to mark that the words entered the record and did not drift away. "Thank you," she says. "Accountability and change. Both." The director answers. Counsel glances at the sealed sleeve, then at Zuri. "Ready to transfer to your bag on camera?" He asks. "Ready?" she says. She lowers the camera just enough to bring her backpack into the lower frame without losing the towel or the notebook or the faces. She opens the outer pocket, places the sealed sleeve inside, and zips it closed. "For the record," she says, "the sealed passport is now secured in my bag. Custody remains with me. Confirmed." The supervisor says. She writes the line and the time, then initials it. The director looks at the ring. "If you are willing," she says to the witnesses, "submit your videos to the address on the form. Keep your originals. Do not delete. If you prefer not to share, thank you for standing. Your presence mattered." The woman with silver hair lifts her phone for a final, steady moment. The man in the navy suit shifts just enough to ease his stance and keep the frame clear. James Park nods with his mouth closed, the kind of agreement that protects itself by not needing extra words. Counsel turns to the supervisor. "Rebooking now," he says. "After apology on camera, boarding decisions tied to valid documentation only." "Yes," the supervisor says. She takes out a pen again. The click is that same dry, decisive sound. She writes as she speaks. Then she lifts her radio. "Rebooking needed at this counter for one passenger under corrective protocol. Hold boarding at adjacent gate for 5 minutes if necessary. Maintain preservation status." The radio answers with crisp confirmations. Each reply feels like a tie driven into new rail. Zuri raises the phone again to its original line. The towel and notebook and faces all in the frame. She breathes and holds. The room is not loud. It is exact. The next words will sit on top of everything built so far, and the counter is ready to carry them. The director does not climb a step or ask for a microphone. She simply aligns herself with the counter and the towel and the notebook so that the scene lives on one clean plane. At her right, the supervisor stands with pen ready. At Zuri's left, counsel angles his body, so he supports without blocking the lens. The officers hold their quiet posts like cornerstones. The ring of witnesses closes to a respectful distance and leaves a straight lane through the stanchions. The building hum lowers until it feels like a thin thread under the skin of the room. For the record, the director says, and the phrase lands like a key turning the blank. Today, at this gate, an employee discarded a traveler's passport into a trash bin. That act was discriminatory and unacceptable. The traveler's document is intact and sealed. The traveler retains custody. Camera feeds are preserved. Witness videos exist and may be submitted at the traveler's discretion. The employee has been removed from duty and escorted from the area pending investigation. Non-retaliation is in effect for any staff who provide statements. Her voice is formal and even, the cadence of a contract spoken aloud. No tremor, no flourish. Zuri steadies the frame so the towel and the notebook and the director's mouth share the same rectangle. She notes the faint brush of her own breath against the phone's edge and holds it level. The sealed sleeve rests in the front pocket of her backpack, cool against the fabric, light but not nothing, a quiet anchor at her ribs. I am sorry, the director says, and the hum recedes until the syllables sit on bare air. We failed you at this gate. We will not fail the next traveler. She lifts her gaze to include the ring. Keep recording. No one is to interfere with any device. If you choose to share your recordings, the address on the form is a working address. Thank you. Zuri says, for the record, public apology issued at the gate and acknowledged the held quiet breaks, and the room's sounds return in a soft rush, the thin breath of the ventilation, a distant chime at another counter, the shuffle of shoes beyond the stanchions. Counsel marks the moment with one small nod, then places rails in measured language. On record, he says, the apology has been issued publicly at the gate. A written apology will follow. Complaint history will be reviewed. Training and protocols will be audited. Policy language on confiscation authority will be clarified and published. Non-retaliation has been stated. The supervisor writes as he speaks. Her pen makes that dry, resolved sound that turns air into paper and paper into witness. She dates and initials. She underlines once. She checks the time on the board and writes it in words rather than digits, as if refusing to let numerals flatten the shape of the day. Do you wish to add anything more for the record before we proceed to rebooking? The director asks Zuri. You owe us nothing. Your choice. Zuri keeps her voice steady and exact. Passengers witnessed a pattern of extra scrutiny toward people of color at this desk. I request a review of complaint patterns for this station and adjacent stations. I also request written assurance that staff who report patterns will be protected from retaliation. Granted, the director says. She writes complaint pattern review and boxes it with a single clean square. She writes non-retaliation again and draws one line beneath it. She looks to the supervisor. Begin rebooking. Hold boarding at the adjacent gate if needed. This process takes precedence for the next minutes. The supervisor lifts her radio. Her voice is the same steady instrument it has been since she arrived. Rebooking at this counter for one under corrective protocol. Pausa adjacent, boarding 5 minutes. Confirm. The radio replies come back like short steel taps on new ties. Counsel turns slightly, so his shoulder faces the counter and his chest faces Zuri and the lens, ready to secure your boarding and make sure the paper breathes. He asks, "Ready?" Zuri says. She drops the frame a fraction, so the counter lives in the lower third, while the faces stay in the upper plane. The supervisor opens the terminal and still refuses to let the screen become the only witness. She narrates every action, so audio will stand on its own if it has to. Passenger rebooked. Same day without penalty. Notation added that delay resulted from airline action at the gate. Forward cabin seat assigned. Case number initiated for complaint file. She writes the case number on the form, reads it aloud, prints the new boarding document, and places it on the towel so the camera can drink the ink. Zuri eases the zoom until the paper edges are sharp and the text is legible without losing the towel or the notebook or the faces. For the record, she says, "New boarding document issued," then speaks the flight number, the departure time, the gate, and the case number. The paper holds under light, as if it understands it is now part of the spine. The director addresses the ring. "We will immediately post a notice at this gate and the adjacent gates stating that travelers have the right to record public employees in public spaces." She writes post notice in 3 short strokes, underlines each once, then turns back to Zuri. "Passenger Bill of Rights materials will be reviewed for clarity and visibility," she says, formal again. No promises beyond the weight her signature can carry. The woman with silver hair lifts her phone. "May I add one sentence for her record?" she asks. The director nods. "I witnessed the agent discard the passport. My video shows the moment at 14 minutes past the hour and 7 minutes. I will submit a copy and keep the original." "Thank you," Zuri says. Witness confirms timestamp 14 minutes past the hour and 7 minutes. The man in the navy suit adds his line in the same spare register. "My angle captures the fall and the sound. I will send that clip." "Thank you," Zuri says. Her wrist remains a hinge, not a wire. Her arm hums with human work, but her frame does not drift. James Park speaks. "I will submit notes, dates and times and gates, and any messages that show slowed processing for specific passengers." He looks to the director and to the supervisor and receives 2 small nods that make a bridge. "Your statement is protected." The director says, not as a threat to anyone else, simply as a wall he can put his back to. "If anyone attempts retaliation, report it to me and to legal. My name is on the form." The taller officer shifts to make space for a wheelchair. Passing behind the ring, he does not break the line. He moves like part of the set that knows how to give way without changing shape. Counsel tips his chin toward Zuri's backpack. "Ready to place the pack on your shoulder on camera?" He asks. Small step. "Good record." "Ready," Zuri says. She lowers the lens just enough to bring the bag into the lower plane, slides her arm through the strap, and seats the weight against her shoulder blade. "For the record, the sealed passport remains in my custody and is now secured on my shoulder." "Confirmed," the supervisor says, and writes the time in words beside the line, then initials with the same clipped sound the pen has made all morning. The sound of small decisions becoming law. "There is one thing more," the director says. She turns to Zuri. "Do you want this apology spoken directly to your lens? Here, now, so your record holds it without edit?" "Yes," Zuri says, The director faces the phone. She does not stare at her reflection. She looks into the black circle like it is the eye of the room and the future. Both on behalf of this airport and this operation, I apologize for the discriminatory act committed against you. I apologize for the denial of boarding without cause. I apologize that you were required to assert rights that should have been respected. We failed you. We commit to corrective action and to public accountability. The hum fades while she speaks, then returns with a soft swell when the last word lands, as if the room knows the formal moment is complete and the machinery of the day has permission to breathe again. Thank you, Zuri says. For the record, public apology issued directly to traveler's camera at the gate. Council sets the next rails with the same measured pace. We will request follow-up dates, review completion deadlines, and publication targets for training changes and signage. We will also request a meeting to present policy proposals already drafted by the traveler. Noted, the director says, writing follow-up dates and publication targets, and meeting for proposals in a row, then underlining each. We will create a passenger advocate contact that reports directly to operations leadership. She speaks the phrase, reports directly, with a slight emphasis that makes the structure change audible, and writes the words, passenger advocate contact with a single underline. Passenger advocate contact to be created reporting to operations leadership. Zuri repeats, building the line into the record plank by plank. The supervisor slides a small envelope across the towel. Inside is the complaint copy, the boarding document copy, and the acknowledgement sheet. She writes the contents on the outside, dates it, and signs across the flap, so the envelope itself becomes a small sealed record in the larger one. She leaves it in the camera's view until Zuri takes it. For the record, Zuri says, receipt of envelope containing complaint copy, boarding document copy, and acknowledgement documented. She lifts it with her free hand and tucks it into the backpack with the same unhurried certainty as the sealed sleeve. Please read the complaint case number once more for the audio track. Counsel says, the supervisor reads it clean and slow. Zuri repeats it in one line that will cut neatly into any edit. The director writes it again in her notebook and draws a quiet circle around it. Radio, the supervisor says, and speaks into it at a measured tempo. Rebooking complete. Apology issued on camera. Complaint case number established. Preservation confirmed. Non-retaliation stated. The radio replies, confirm each line, labels clicking onto actions that are already complete, so they cannot be misnamed later. Do you need water or a chair? The director asks Zuri, or do you prefer to stand and finish standing? Standing is fine. Zuri says, then we stand. The director answers, the sentence is not ceremony. It is alignment. The concourse breathes around them. A gate down the line calls a boarding group, and the sound fades like a wave withdrawing along tile. The child from the earlier family returns with a parent and watches quietly for a breath before being guided along by a hand on a sleeve. The lights keep their thin electrical song. The board flips to a new city far away. For the record, Zuri says, we will proceed to board when called, with custody maintained, while complaint, processing, and policy review continue. She lets the sentence settle flat and true, and then holds the frame steady. Counsel watches her as a father and as an attorney, measuring for any tremor and finding none. He draws a quiet breath that releases a little tension from his shoulders, and then matches his cadence back to hers. The supervisor scans her notes and the forms and the towel, and finds no loose thread. The officers maintain their posts without becoming the story. The director closes her notebook but keeps one hand on it, palm flat, as if pressing the new lines into the paper. When the director turns to leave, her heels do not hurry and do not stall. The steps are decisive, without being loud, a signal that the work carries forward into rooms without glass, and into schedules that do not allow for drift. The hum of the building resumes its ordinary density. At the adjacent gate, a jet engine spools and settles, a low contained thunder that sounds like work beginning rather than storm approaching. Zuri lifts her chin a fraction and draws one slow, measured breath. It is not relief, it is calibration. The sealed sleeve rests against her shoulder inside the pack, a cool rectangle that presses a straight line against fabric. She can feel the line as a shape rather than a weight. She can hear the zipper's faint memory of its path. She can hear the long, even breath at her own lips ring the edge of the microphone like a small metronome keeping time. The director's footfalls fade. The supervisor speaks one last short instruction into the radio and sets it down. Counsel looks at Zuri and then at the lane, and then at the towel and nods once more. A mark that says, the chapter has placed its stones where they needed to go. The ring opens the path again without speaking. Zuri keeps the lens true for one more beat, then lowers it a fraction to bring the lane into view. The room is not loud, it is exact. The necessary sounds have been spoken. The next ones will come from the speaker above the gate when boarding is called. Until then she stands, breath even, frame steady, custody maintained, the public record alive in her hands. The apology has been spoken into the lens and set in ink on paper. The rebooking is printed and placed. The case number has been read and circled. The room breathes again, but it is a different kind of breath, less like shock and more like the calm that follows a precise incision. The director closes her notebook with one flat palm and leaves the lane with the steady rhythm of work that continues elsewhere. The supervisor remains at the counter, pen ready for any final notation. The officers hold their quiet posts. The ring of witnesses loosens without dissolving. The hum of the building returns to its ordinary weight, a low, even thread under everything. Zuri does not lower the phone all the way. She keeps the frame wide enough to hold the counter at the lower edge and the supervisor's pen in view. The sealed sleeve rests inside the backpack against her shoulder, a cool rectangle pressed through fabric like a straight edge under paper. She can feel the shape with every slow breath. She does not need to touch it. Knowing where it sits is enough. Counsel stands at her left shoulder, where he has stood since he arrived, not in front, not behind, a hinge and not a shield. He watches the lane the director took, then returns his attention to Zuri's face, the way a person returns to a compass after checking the horizon. In a voice made for plain decisions, he says that there is a choice to make, and that the choice belongs to her first. Zuri keeps her voice level. She speaks each idea as if setting it onto a ruler. Publish now. The lens holds the truth. The record here holds the procedures. The two should travel together. Each clause lands with a measured weight, not hurried, not soft, the cadence of a strategist placing a final piece on a board and letting it settle. Counsel answers with a sentence that locks like a clasp. Then we lock. The words are low, sure, and final. He tips his head toward the supervisor and speaks for the record that the traveler intends to publish a clip from her device before boarding, and that they will coordinate with operations to ensure no interference with recording or boarding. Understood. The supervisor replies. She writes the sentence, and the scratch of her pen is a clean seam through cloth. She underlines the phrase, "No interference," and initials the line. The pen's dry sound is the small music of procedure, becoming promise. Counsel looks back to Zuri. He says that publishing here will pull her, and by extension him, into a broader light before internal steps have finished. That there will be calls and requests and attempts to shape the story. He does not name names or forecast tactics. He places the shape of the weather on the counter and leaves the air clear. The choice remains hers. Zuri draws a breath that rings the edge of the microphone like a very small bell. She remembers morning questions at the kitchen table, the laminated card worn smooth under her thumb, the way her father's voice slowed when a precise point was at stake. She does not look at the card now. She places her decision into the same measured groove. Publish now. The lens holds the truth. The record here holds the procedures. The two should travel together. Counsel accepts the sentence the way a carpenter accepts a measurement that lands on an earlier pencil mark. Then we lock. He repeats, quiet and clean. He turns slightly to the ring. Witnesses, if you choose to share your copies publicly, do so from your own accounts. Keep your masters. Note dates and times of any calls you receive. Send copies only to the address on the form. The woman with silver hair nods, a small motion like a clasp, clicking shut. The man in the navy suit adds a brief yes that sounds like a line drawn under a number. James Park stands a little straighter, held by a phrase written and underlined in a notebook, and by the knowledge that his name has been marked for protection. The supervisor draws a single page from her folio and sets it on the towel beside the boarding document. It is plain, just boxes and lines and a place where names live in tidy rows. Witness contact log, she says. Voluntary, names and numbers, if you choose. She writes, will not be shared without consent along the margin, and signs her initials. She does not push the paper forward. She lets choice be the only force that moves pens. Zuri lowers the frame a fraction, so the new page lives in the lower plane. For the record, she says, a voluntary witness contact log has been placed on the counter. She reads the margin note aloud. She holds long enough for the ring to see itself as part of the document if it wishes to be. Counsel turns a shade toward the concourse, making a pocket of quiet without stepping away. He takes his phone from his jacket with the care of a person handling a small tool rather than a device, and taps a familiar number. He does not whisper. He speaks openly so the room can own the fact of the call without needing its contents. He identifies the gate and the status. He says the record is clean and the apology public, and the traveler retains custody. He says they are publishing and asks for statements that name dates and times and actions, no adjectives. He adds one exact line to carry forward and no more. That a teenager kept a lens steady and strangers refused to look away. He ends the call with the same measured touch he used to begin it. The end of the call sounds like a seal pressed flat. The line he has set into the world hangs in the air, light and hard at once. Zuri knows it is not a flourish but a handhold, something for other hands to catch when the wind picks up. The officers remain at their posts. The supervisor's pen rests for a beat on the pad, then lifts again. The ring adjusts its stance with the quiet understanding that what began here will continue beyond the room. Cost arrives and stands in the light like a clear shadow. Counsel can feel the line that runs from this counter to the unread messages on his desk, to cases that do not care how many lenses wake in a day, to donors who prefer quiet victories, to colleagues who will breathe with him, and to others who will measure distance. He draws a breath that does not tremble, sets it beside the other parts, and looks at his daughter. The line simplifies until it is a plank he can carry. Zuri lifts her thumb, and the tap against the glass is a soft, affirmative sound. She opens her channel with the confidence of muscle memory. The interface is familiar like a hallway walked 100 mornings. She selects the clip that shows the moment of discard, the sealed sleeve, the apology, the case reference spoken aloud. She types a caption that is nothing but facts. Case reference, gate in words, time in words, apology issued, preservation in effect, non-retaliation stated, no color, no heat. Then the motion that matters, her thumb seals the action. The device offers a quiet transition sound, not a flourish but a neat latch. For a fraction of a breath, the room leans toward silence, and the silence feels like the sound of a key turning. The first seconds after a post are not spectacle, they are quiet clocks. The screen shifts from preparing to published. Numbers begin their slow river. They will run faster later. Zuri keeps the frame steady and lets the river flow somewhere else. She hears the faint rise of attention as people who were here become people who are also there. Screens, lighting faces already held by the cool glow of the gate. Far down the concourse, a boarding chime rings for another destination and withdraws again. The supervisor glances at the board, then sets her pen down for the first time since she arrived. Not because the work is over, but because the line on this page has reached its right edge. Zuri adjusts a fraction, so the strap lies clean along her shoulder. She feels the cool rectangle pressing that straight line through the fabric again. The shape does not change. That is the point. She does not need to look. Presence is enough. Counsel speaks a simple line that ties the private to the public ledger. I am canceling the remainder of my day, he says. I will accompany the traveler. I will meet with operations within the next 2 days. I will file formal requests for complaint history, training records, and policy language by close of business. He does not discuss who will push back. He does not rehearse the conversations. He gives the room the only arithmetic it deserves, a clear commitment set where all can see it. The supervisor writes the time in words and notes the commitment. She lifts her radio and speaks into it with that crisp, steady cadence, ready to release the lane at the gate when the traveler is prepared. Preserve all documents and feeds per earlier instruction. Legal follow-up pending. The replies come back like bright steel taps, confirmations that sound like tools meeting stone. James Park steps to the voluntary page. He prints his name with a hand steadier than it was a short while ago, and writes a number and an address. He does not announce the act. He simply leaves a trail that others can follow. The woman with silver hair adds her name in careful script. The man in the navy suit prints his in neat block letters. The page grows by 3 lines, and then rests, enough to begin. The ring remains a ring. It is smaller, lighter, still present. Phones lower not because anyone demanded that they lower, but because something heavy has shifted, and everyone knows it. The air is not bright. It is clear. Counsel moves a half-step closer to Zuri and considers the line of the frame. He does not touch the phone. He places one more sentence on the record, that they will proceed to the gate when called and maintain custody of the sealed document through boarding and flight. He follows the sentence with his eyes. Lens to strap, to notes to lens again, and the sequence lifts a straight bar across his chest. Zuri breathes in a measured count, and out on the same count. She tastes the thin metal of conditioned air, and hears the soft rise and fall of talk around the edges. She feels the zipper seam kiss the sealed edge, and makes space for that precise sensation without letting it lead. Every detail keeps her in a lane she chose and built. The speaker above the counter clicks and clears its throat in the mild way of polite machinery. A measured voice asks for the boarding pause to be lifted and announces that passengers for the next flight may begin to line up soon. The supervisor looks to Zuri, She does not ask if Zuri is ready. She asks how Zuri wants to walk. Straight line. Zuri says, phone up. Bag on shoulder. The seal stays visible until I enter the jetway. Then inside the bag, she sets the steps, the way she set the caption. No drama, just rail. Counsel agrees without adding weight. He will walk at her left shoulder. The supervisor can walk at her right if she wishes. An officer can hold the lane clear without touch. Zuri says, that is fine. Thanks. Pass between them as function, not ceremony. The moment of locking arrives without a clang. It is not a sound more than any other. It is a meeting of set parts, the decision to publish at the counter, the plan to walk in a straight line when the speaker calls, the supervisor's inked lines, the director's notebook closed under a calm palm, the three names on the voluntary page, the sentence counsel pushed into the air about a teenager and strangers. Each piece fits into the next until the whole holds. Zuri glances once at the post, now living on her channel. The view count begins to move in small, tidy steps. Notifications tap the top of the glass and line up like envelopes on a table. She does not open them. She lets the current run while she stands as anchor. The seal presses its straight edge through the strap and into her attention again. The rectangle is cool. The meaning is steady. Cost sits within her, and she does not look away. She will miss a quiet hour in her aunt's kitchen today, the clink of a spoon against a glass, the warmth of a story told with no recording device between two faces. She will carry a story that strangers will want to touch when she would rather talk about books or cases or the way late light pulls silver from a river. She will be asked to explain her calm to people who think calm is found rather than built. She names each cost and places it on a shelf where it can be honored without taking the room. Counsel feels his own ledger adjust, calls to return, meetings to move. One colleague who will say the right fight, one who will keep an even voice and let silence make its own shape. He breathes, and the numbers resolve. The arithmetic lines up and he can carry it. The supervisor smooths the towel, though it is already flat. She squares the boarding document and the envelope, so their corners align like tiles. She does not tidy for tidying's sake. She orders what must be clear for the next step to be clean. The hum grows by a notch. As ground crew opens the jetway at the adjacent gate, a breath of cool air travels along the tile. The speaker at this gate clicks again. The supervisor raises her eyes. The lane is clear. The ring yields space with a shared understanding that does not require instruction. When boarding is called, she says, "We will walk." Zuri nods. Counsel nods. The nearer officer gives a brief angle of his chin that promises space without force. Zuri lifts the phone by a fraction and rechecks her frame. The counter in the lower edge, the supervisor's notes, the envelope with a signed flap, the quiet mouth of the jetway beyond the cord, the strap along her shoulder, the breath she can hear, though no one else will notice. The lock is set. The hinges are sound. The door will swing on the frame they have built, and the next chapter will meet them at the threshold. The lane holds like a quiet chord. The room hums at a low, even pitch. Zuri keeps the phone steady. The counter in the lower edge, the supervisor's pen in view. The mouth of the jetway waiting beyond the rope. The sealed sleeve inside her backpack rests against her shoulder. A cool anchor pressing a straight line through fabric. She does not touch it. Knowing where it sits is enough. The supervisor listens to her radio, then lifts her eyes. The operations room is open. Glass walls, power and a screen. A place to make clean copies and write a careful trail. Zuri nods once and states for the record that they will move, that her camera stays up, that custody of the sealed passport remains with her, that the bag stays on her shoulder. They cross a short corridor and enter a square room of light and edges. The concourse sound softens behind glass like a tide heard through a window. A table waits the color of quiet stone. A mounted display waits in sleep. A cabinet rests closed with a small keyed latch. The air is cooler by a shade. Everything invites precision. The supervisor lays a fresh towel on the table. As if she is setting a stage, she places a blank evidence form and a page titled Digital Media Chain of Custody beside it. She taps a card to the cabinet, removes a factory-sealed thumb drive still inside a clear sleeve, and sets it where the lens can see the printed serial. She writes that serial before she breaks the plastic. The wrapper opens with a whisper like a page turned by a careful hand. Counsel opens a narrow black case, simple and plain. Inside are an adapter and a second new drive. He sets his case at the far corner away from the airport device, like a cook who never lets raw and cooked meat by accident. He says in measured steps that they will mirror to two devices, one for the airport, one for the traveler, that both will be hashed and matched. His words fall like ties under a length of new track. Zuri tilts the lens a fraction so towel, forms, and devices share one rectangle. Her heart keeps a steady beat that matches this exact work. The cool rectangle at her shoulder is a ruler under paper. Every breath finds it and steadies. Witnesses step forward in turn. The woman with the silver hair holds her phone like a book and speaks her name. She says her clip shows the hand above the bin, the small pause, the fall, the impact that sounds like a dry leaf among paper. The supervisor notes each phrase, connects a clean cable, and begins the copy. The progress bar glides. It is not dramatic. It is a small river doing what rivers do. The man in the navy suit follows. He reads his file time aloud and says his angle shows the face and the deliberate motion. The copy begins. The bar moves. James Park steps next and says his clip begins before the drop and shows earlier questioning of a different family. The bar moves. When the first copy completes, the supervisor transfers the files to the airport drive and then to the traveler drive. She reads each file name as it moves and opens a terminal window. She says the algorithm as if reading the full name of a law before invoking it. The screen prints a string that looks like a long, unbroken signature. She reads it into the room, writes it on the form, and repeats the process for the second device. The two signatures match. She says the word match and writes the word mat. The page gains a line of snow that will not melt. Zuri places the words into the air with care. Mirror copies placed on two sterile devices, one in airport custody, one in traveler custody. Hash values generated and matched. She spells the algorithm so audio alone can carry meaning. She says the word verified and lets it settle. Counsel asks to play the moment, not to dwell, but to set truth where it will not move. The supervisor opens the first clip and sets the volume just above the room's breath. Glass carries a soft echo. The hand holds the passport above the bin. The face is clear, a pause that belongs to decision and not to accident. The fall, the light rain sound of paper on paper, the time in the corner, the room holds. The second clip repeats the scene from higher up and includes the faces that did not expect to become witnesses. The third clip shows the earlier questions to the mother and her children and returns to the fall. Zuri speaks the line that names the scene without adding heat. The clips depict the discard of a valid passport by the senior gate agent at this gate, with times that agree across devices. She adds the bare words for the earlier pattern and lets them stand. Her voice stays surgical and human at once. The supervisor prints a narrow receipt and stamps it with time. The stamp lands with a soft, decided strike. She writes the serials and the hash strings and signs where it says receiving officer. Counsel reads initials where it says observing counsel and slides the paper to Zuri. Zuri reads and signs where it says traveler acknowledged. 3 names on one bridge. The director's steps arrive outside the glass. She enters without rush, takes in towel, devices, forms, faces, and opens her notebook. She writes 2 short lines, then lifts her head. She says they have begun review of prior complaints for this agent. She says early checks show multiple entries over the past year that were closed without action. She will not quote numbers until the full count is confirmed. The shape is there. She places the shape without drama, not gossip, not threat, a diagram, before a solution. Zuri says, "Thank you for the record," and lets that line exist as a door that will open with hinges instead of heat. The director looks to the screen. She asks to see the clips. The supervisor plays them in order. The director watches without blinking. She does not perform. When the 3rd clip ends, she speaks with a voice built for formal weight. She says they will convene with legal and operations this afternoon. She says they will request a timeline to publish policy changes and to post clear recording rights at every gate. She says they will establish a passenger advocate line that reports up without dilution. She writes each clause as she speaks. The pen makes that dry, certain sound that turns intention into rails. Zuri feels the cool rectangle in her pack again, the steady anchor at her shoulder. The sealed sleeve is not only an object, it is a temperature and a line. She holds to it while the supervisor reaches for tamper tape. The tape lifts with a soft hiss, a clean ribbon of purpose. Counsel opens the traveler case, places the drive, runs the strip across the mouth, and writes the time across the tape with slow, deliberate strokes. He presses once with his thumb. For the record, the traveler copy is sealed in view under witness. The adhesive shines faintly and waits. The supervisor slides the airport device into a small envelope, seals the flap, signs across the seam. So her name lives half on paper and half on glue, and stamps the corner. She writes storage location in custody cabinet and returns the envelope to its shelf. The latch closes. The key turns. The click is soft and final. Zuri narrates the trail so anyone who later listens can see it without eyes. Airport device sealed and placed in custody cabinet with stamped receipt. Traveler device sealed in traveler case. Hash values matched and recorded. She breathes once to let every period become a small stone that stays. The director turns to Zuri and states on record the sentence the room has earned. The system failed you until you made it look at itself. We will write steps that reduce the chance that the next child has to do your job for us. She does not pray. She names work. Zuri nods and answers with thanks that carries relief and resolve in equal measure. The 2 notes do not cancel. They harmonize. The supervisor's radio answers a quiet call. Boarding will stay on schedule. 10 minutes. She says they can walk back now and that the lane will be held. Zuri lifts the phone and frames the towel, the sealed traveler case tucked into her bag. The counter outside. The rope and the waiting mouth of the jetway. They leave the glass room. The concourse light feels brighter not because bulbs changed, but because something heavy has been sorted into labeled parts. The ring of witnesses is thinner now, smaller clusters instead of a wall, and yet faces still lift with recognition when Zuri returns to the counter. Work went somewhere and came back with proof. Zuri speaks to the lens in clean planks, copies secured, hashes matched, devices sealed, Rezept stamped, cabinet closed, Prior complaints under review. Recording rights notices planned. Passenger advocate line to be created. She keeps pace even and unhurried, the voice of a builder calling out materials as they arrive. The director remains just beyond the rope, notebook under her palm. When she begins to leave, her steps are decisive but not loud. The sound of authority, returning to do more work in rooms without glass. The supervisor lifts her radio. Short confirmations answer, crisp and professional, like bright taps on steel. The counter breathes. The jetway door whispers. A distant chime acknowledges another flight. Zuri adjusts the strap so the sealed sleeve rests exactly where she wants it. A cool bar along. A familiar path. She inhales through her nose and exhales in a line. The background returns to its ordinary hum. The moment of formal apology now lives in audio that stands alone without help, and the room has resumed its living noise. The listener will hear the difference. For the record, Zuri says, and her voice carries control without hurry. Public apology issued and acknowledged. Preservation confirmed. Copies sealed. Policy steps named. She ends the line without a flourish and lets the air hold it. She looks once at counsel. He answers with a single nod that means a meeting, and then another, and then signatures that carry weight. The supervisor squares the towel and aligns the boarding document and the witness log so their corners make one clean corner. The officer opens space without touch. The speaker over the counter clicks. The measured voice says boarding will begin on time. The lane opens like a clean page. The radio at the supervisor's shoulder answers with a short tone that means the next steps are ready. The director's footsteps fade into the corridor. They are waiting, but not idle. They are positioned. Words are ready to become policy. Ink is ready to find paper. Rails are ready to be laid. Zuri keeps the lens steady, breath even, seal cool at her shoulder, and the room holds that quiet promise that arrives when the difficult part has been named aloud, and the work ahead can finally begin. The concourse hum settles into a steady bar of sound that feels like machinery at rest but ready. The glass room is behind them. The counter is ordered. The witness page holds its few careful names. The sealed traveler drive rests in Zuri's bag, beside the cool rectangle of the sealed passport sleeve. Two small anchors along her shoulder that keep her body aligned, the way a ruler keeps ink straight. The supervisor aligns the boarding document with the towel's edge and keeps her pen ready. Counsel stands at Zuri's left, a quiet hinge. The officers hold the lane with open hands and shoulders placed just so. The director waits a few steps off with her notebook under her palm, eyes on the room, the way a pilot reads a panel without haste. The speaker above the counter clears its small throat. Boarding will begin on time. The words move like a train easing from a siding toward the main line. Zuri lifts the phone a fraction to check the frame. The lower edge holding the counter, the sealed notes, the rope, the dark mouth of the jetway. Her breath is even. The cool of the sleeve is a line she can feel without looking. The supervisor's radio clicks to life with a thin current of air. Operations is on the line for the director. The director accepts a small handset and does not step away. She gives the gate, and the case reference in clean syllables confirms that copies are sealed and the apology is public. She listens. Her eyes stay steady. Then she speaks a single sentence that turns the morning on a hinge. We are proceeding from suspension to termination for cause effective immediately. She places the word cause on the counter like a weight. Zuri sets the words into the world, the way a clerk stamps a ledger. For the record, employment termination announced by operations to the director online at the gate. Her voice is clear and balanced, not pleased, not cold, simply exact. The supervisor writes the sentence and prints the time in words. She underlines for cause and effective immediately. The pen makes a dry sound that feels like a cord drawn tight. One officer angles an elbow, so the lane stays open and calm. An invisible hand-shaping air. At the far edge of the concourse, a change in motion lifts a ripple through the watchers. Thompson appears with hair askew and jacket unbuttoned. The badge is no longer at her collar. Her eyes sweep the room with a hard tilt and land on James Park. She crosses to the counter at a pace that tries to arrive before a door shuts. The officer nearest the wood raises an open hand. Thompson leans over the counter with both palms pressed flat. "Give me the cabinet key," she says, voice built from old habit and stripped of authority. The supervisor does not move back. Her reply stays inside the line of policy. "You are not authorized to access custody." The key rests on her belt. Her hand remains still and far from metal. Thompson's breath catches. She turns to James. "You will correct your statement. You saw a mistake and you know it." The words are tight and fast. A plea that reads like pressure. James looks at Zuri, then at the supervisor. His voice is not loud. It is exact. "I saw what I saw. I retrieved the passport from the trash. I gave it to you." He turns back to Thompson. "I will not change my statement." Thompson's mouth hardens. She pulls her phone from her pocket and taps with a quick, practiced thumb. Zuri feels the air alter before the reason surfaces. The overreach arrives as a small thing, a message sent in a public room because habit assumes the room will behave like a back hallway. James's phone vibrates. He checks the screen and swallows. He shows the display so the camera can see without zoom. The message carries his name and instructs him to say he misremembered and to delete any copy. The time sits in the corner. The sender's name is the same one written on forms now stamped in ink. "For the record," Zuri says. "Attempted interference with a witness in view and on camera." Her voice tightens. Not with anger, with exactness. As a knot draws clean, the officer steps half a pace toward Thompson without touch. The supervisor writes, "Attempted interference," and draws a single straight underline. Counsel names two words he has used for years without flourish: obstruction and retaliation. He adds report to legal and include this screen as exhibit. His hands remain at his sides. The authority is in the naming. Thompson reaches across the counter, as if a straight arm could erase a minute. The officer's palm meets her forearm with a steady pressure that stops motion before contact. No one raises a voice. The stop is a pause with the weight of the building behind it. The supervisor lifts her radio and speaks with the same measured tone she has used all morning. A tone that makes rooms breathe instead of flood. Additional unit to this gate for attempted interference with a witness, she states the name and the time, so the air holds them. The director steps to the line, notebook flat under her hand. She faces Thompson across the wood, with a voice built for public rooms. "You are not to contact staff regarding this matter. You will be escorted from the secure area. There is no scold. There is no theater. There is only a cord tied and trimmed." Thompson's eyes flick from face to face, and then toward the custody cabinet as if a handle might confess a secret in her favor. She takes 2 quick steps and pulls. The lock answers with a precise alarm, not loud, not showy, a bright, concise tone that means you do not open what is sealed. It sounds like a line drawn in firm ink. "For the record," Zuri says, "attempted unauthorized access to custody cabinet triggered alarm." The nearest officer places a palm on the door to hold it still, then lowers his hand. He does not zeize. He occupies the space where worse choices might grow. 2 additional officers arrive on that clean alarm, boots landing with the rhythm of drilled steps that sit low in the chest. They do not rush. They take positions that create air, angles, and a clear path to the exit. The supervisor silences the cabinet with a small turn of the key and writes alarm below interference. The ring exhales in one controlled measure. No one cheers. The sound that follows is a radio placed down on a counter with a dry click. The soft punctuation of power changing hand. Counsel speaks, so the recorder can own the line. The record now includes a post-suspension attempt to alter witness statements and to access sealed evidence. This exceeds policy breach. This meets the language for cause in any manual I have ever read. He is not needling, he is setting a fence. Thompson's voice arrives late to the hour and too loud for its worth. This is harassment. You are setting me up. The words strike tile and skitter. They cannot climb the stamped envelope or the hash strings or the time printed in the corner of clips inside a glass room. The director does not chase the sentence. She recommends that Thompson collect personal items with a human resources representative present and notes that formal notice will be sent to the address of record. She uses phrases that cause documents to move. James inhales and finds his shape. He tells the supervisor he has another note, an older date, and an incident number he wrote on a slip last week when he did not know where to put it. The supervisor thanks him with a single nod that looks like a door unlocked. She writes the date in the margin and leaves room for the rest. It is a quiet gesture. It is also a lever. The director lifts the handset again, names the gate, names the events, and confirms the lane will remain clear and boarding will proceed. She receives a string of short acknowledgments that sound like stones set in a shallow river to make a crossing. She replaces the handset and looks to Zuri. If you are ready to walk, the lane is ready, she says. Policy work will proceed while you travel. She does not call it closure. She calls it motion. Zuri's grip tightens for one count, then softens. She feels the 2 cool rectangles along her shoulder. One older, one new, both real. For the record, she says, boarding will proceed, and the seal will remain visible until the jetway threshold. Then we'll move inside the bag. The supervisor writes that line and aligns it with the line for escort. An officer opens space without touch. The ring makes a path. The woman with silver hair places a hand to her chest in a shape that reads as gratitude and also as permission to go. James stands straight and gives a small nod that feels like a promise to show up again when asked. Zuri takes a step. Thompson spits one last sentence into the air. You think this is victory. You are making a spectacle. It lands with a thin metallic clatter and lies still. No one lifts it. Silence draws a border around the words and leaves them on the wrong side of the room. They walk, counsel at her left, supervisor at her right, an officer ahead to hold a clear channel. The rope lifts and settles behind them. The speaker reads the first boarding group, and the sound rides the air like a calm tide. Zuri keeps the lens true, and the sealed sleeve visible along her shoulder. The jetway hum grows, a soft tunnel power. Tile underfoot gives way to ribbed metal, a change in texture that signals a line between jurisdictions. At the threshold, Zuri narrates the movement like a surgeon calling an instrument. The seal moves inside the bag now. She slides the traveler case into the inner pocket and closes the zipper with one smooth pull, checks it with a firm press, and says, sealed and secure. The words are low and exact, and carry the weight of a signature. The supervisor hears. The officer hears. Counsel hears. The lens hears. Enough. Behind them, the custody cabinet sits quiet and locked. The witness page waits for later calls. The director begins to speak policy into her notebook as if it were a phone, words that will become memos, then signatures, then printed notices hung in rooms like this one from coast to coast. Recording permitted. No interference. Advocate contact. The phrases are short and black and will not fade. The jetway breath carries the smell of conditioned air and faint warm metal. Zuri keeps the camera up until the turn, then lowers it to her chest. For the record, termination announced, interference documented, custody attempt halted, policy steps in motion, boarding underway. She sets each phrase like a rung and climbs. The cabin waits with a quiet, busy sound and a row number printed on a small plaque. A flight attendant with steady eyes checks her name and nods with recognition that is not starstruck, only human. Zuri slides into the seat and sets the bag so the strap rests along her knee, the straight line of fabric like a bar on a chart. Counsel takes the seat beside her. He does not ask if she is fine. Fine is not a useful unit. He sets his hand on the armrest near hers, a post in the ground. Through the window, the wing holds its patient shape. On the ramp, a tug moves in a slow, careful arc. Engines begin their quiet rise, a low spool that lifts through bone. Zuri touches the zipper once more and listens to the sound of power winding forward. She opens her notes and writes a single sentence so she will see it on landing. Straight lines and sealed things. Then she lets her eyes close for one measured breath as the door seals behind her with a final sound that feels like a paragraph ending and a new page laid open. The morning light spills through a thin veil of cloud, gold and patient. Outside the window, the wing glows with a line of sunlight so sharp it looks drawn by hand. The hum of the cabin feels steady, like breathing in a quiet cathedral. Zuri keeps her hands folded over the strap of her backpack, the sealed drive pressing gently against her knee. The pressure is both reminder and promise. The wheels touch down with a clean, rolling sigh. The city takes the plane's weight and answers with steadiness. On the taxiway, her phone stirs with messages, mentions bloom and vanish. She opens only one, a short note from Ashley, the attendant from the flight before. It reads simply, "You did right. Keep steady." Zuri smiles, then locks the screen and looks out at the rows of hangars. The thin mist, rising from the runway like breath after argument. Inside the terminal, Los Angeles light hums warmer. Richard. Marcus walks beside her without speaking, letting the rhythm of steps bridge silence. They collect their bags, pass under signs that glint, silver, and blue, and breathe air that smells faintly of oranges and fuel. The phone buzzes again. A message from the director. Policy draft complete. Will send memo for record. Marcus reads it over her shoulder and nods once. The smallest confirmation that the work begun at a gate has reached another floor. In the car ride home, the windows catch sunlight and hum with the vibration of movement. The driver's radio plays softly, a voice speaking about a story that sounds familiar in shape, though no names are used. Zuri lets the noise wash over her. She is tired, but it is a clean fatigue. When they arrive, her aunt greets them with the smell of toast and coriander. On the kitchen table sits a bowl of oranges, the same color as the first morning light on the wing. Zuri places the sealed sleeve beside the bowl. The tamper strip shines dull red under the light. She traces a finger along the seam but does not break it. For the record, she says softly, custody maintained, integrity intact. The next days move quietly. The video spreads across screens and pages. News anchors speak her name with different cadences, some crisp, some reverent, some unsure. The company posts new signage across terminals, recording permitted, interference prohibited. Advocate contact posted. The first time she sees a photo of the sign printed in white letters on black acrylic, she stops scrolling. The faint hum of an air conditioner in her room fills the silence around her. She whispers the words aloud. They sound like architecture. Messages come from strangers. A teacher from Denver who says her students watched the clip in class. A father from Phoenix who says his daughter memorized the rites. A retired supervisor who writes that it was time. Each message is a light flicking on somewhere she will never stand. James Park sends a photo of the new notice pinned above the employee break table. Below it, someone has scrawled a small note in marker, "Tell the truth early." Under the image, he writes 2 words, "Thank you." Zuri stares at the screen for a long moment. The words are small, but they hold weight. She feels them settle into her chest, into the same place that once held fear. The sound of the house around her, water pipes, ticking clock, the distant hiss of traffic, becomes a slow rhythm that steadies her breath. When she returns to school, the hallway feels altered, wider somehow. Students wave or glance away shyly. On a bulletin board near the cafeteria, someone has taped a printed copy of the new airport notice beside a paper star. She doesn't remove it. She adds a small note below in plain handwriting. Verify. Weeks slide forward. The airline issues a final internal memo that spreads to news outlets. The words are plain and perfect. All staff are reminded that passengers may document interactions in public areas. Interference is prohibited. Immediate referral available through the advocate line. As the memo prints in offices across airports, the sound carries a line of mechanical whir, pages sliding, staplers closing with clean clicks. Zuri hears that sound only in her imagination, but it feels real. She knows what paper sounds like when power changes shape. At home, her phone buzzes again. It's the message containing the scanned memo. She reads the last line once, then again. The hum of her aunt's refrigerator fills the pause. Zuri says softly, almost like a prayer. Words written, posted, and in force. The room stays silent afterward, a silence that feels earned. Months pass. Zuri visits classrooms with Marcus, answering questions that come faster than she can reply. She teaches students how to breathe before speaking, how to hold a camera steady even when hands shake. She tells them that calm is not surrender but precision. Pencils scratch, pages turn, backpacks rustle. Those sounds feel like progress, like the world taking notes. One afternoon, in a room lined with tall windows, a shy student asks what to do when the voice won't come out. Zuri smiles gently. Hold the frame where your heartbeat steadies your hand. She says, count to 4. Speak as if you were reading the time on a clock. Let silence do its work. The girl nods, and the room seems to breathe with her. Later, Zuri walks through the courtyard alone. Leaves shift above her with a soft applause. She thinks of the people whose names never appeared in headlines, the witnesses, the supervisors who signed forms correctly, the unseen staff who enforced what was promised. Change, she realizes, is a team made of patience. Her phone buzzes again. An email from the director, the final attachment, carrying the new company-wide directive. The text repeats what the memo said, only now it bears her initials beside the advisory committee note. She opens the file and listens, really listen, to the faint click of the cursor, the soft rush of her own breath. Somewhere far away, printers hum, pages slide into stacks, staples close with certain weight. She whispers the words again, this time like a conclusion. For the record, policy implemented, directives active, rights affirmed. Then she lets the silence stand, a silence filled not with waiting but with completion. Outside, the street hums with late light. Zuri steps onto the sidewalk. She touches her shoulder lightly. Where the strap once cut a line across her jacket, there is nothing there now except the memory of steadiness. That memory feels like a hand she can still hold. A small girl nearby lifts a phone to photograph a mural painted across a store wall. The glass reflects the red dot of the recording light. Quick and bright, a blink, no one notices, and everyone needs. Zuri slows her steps to watch. The girl's mother reads the inscription under the mural. Speak with truth. Record with care. Zuri smiles. She inhales. The air tastes like sun-warmed paint and city dust. She exhales slowly. The breath, long and clean, and the sound of her footsteps follows. Soft, rhythmic, confident, until it merges with the city's wider rhythm. The world does not cheer. It moves. Doors open. Papers dry. Lights switch on. Somewhere, another lens blinks red. Somewhere, a voice begins to speak the words she once said. Zuri keeps walking, steady on the line she helped draw, the echo of her own breath fading into a future that is listening. At its heart, this story reminds us that courage often begins in silence, in the quiet decision to say no when it feels safer to say nothing. Zuri's journey teaches that justice isn't a single act of defiance, but a series of steady, deliberate choices to record, to speak, to stay calm when the world shakes. Her strength shows that integrity doesn't need to shout. It simply refuses to bend. In a world where indifference often passes for peace, she proves that true peace only comes from truth. For anyone who has ever been dismissed, overlooked, or silenced, this story offers a mirror and a map. Real gold doesn't fear the fire. As the old saying goes, and real worth is tested in moments when doing right costs more than staying quiet. Whether we face prejudice at work, manipulation in relationships, or systemic unfairness, we can begin the change by standing our ground with clarity, compassion, and proof. The smallest act of recording, documenting, or simply telling the truth can ripple outward, reshaping the world one record at a time. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment when silence felt easier than speaking up? Share your story in the comments. Your voice might be the one that helps someone else find theirs. If this story moved you, leave a like to show your support, and subscribe for more powerful stories about resilience, justice, and hope. May you walk through the noise of life with calm conviction, finding in each step a bit more light, a bit more peace, and the quiet courage to stand for what's right.